And we have a standover, Dr. Hakeem Mohammed, student minister for the Nation of Islam, who's going to be joining us today. Our hot topic that we're starting off with is the current administration. The current administration, I shouldn't say the current administration, the incoming administration. We know that both candidates had talked about, we have a standover, talked about food prices. And one thing with the food prices is both candidates said that they would be able to control food prices. Now, the incoming president is saying, no, he can't control pricing. And pricing is very difficult to bring down. So did he break a campaign promise before he even got in office?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Sharon.
Yeah, first of all, that person revealed himself when he took out that full page ad on the Central Park 5, basically wanted him to be assassinated for something that they didn't commit. So he showed us who he was back then. He showed us who he was when he did not allow Black folks to rent any of his apartments. So he showed us who he was. And for us to have a memory lapse that maybe he has changed to now, especially the last term, I mean, he might as well just went ahead and just said the N-word during his campaign speeches, as far as I'm concerned.
Student minister, you want to weigh in on this?
Weighing in on all of them, not just the incoming administration. I'm talking about the administration that's here right now.
Okay.
Well, the truth of the matter is, it was Mr. Biden when he was a senator who pushed the crime bill. Bill Clinton signed it. Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State under President Barack Obama, is the one that orchestrated the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi. So I think that, if we're going to vote, as Mr. Parker said, vote for Allah, vote for God and His Christ. Which is saying that not that we don't participate in civic and public policy things, but we got to have a God-centered mind. We got to focus on that, because really the reason why I'm on right now what I would consider, I've deemed and called the no fear, no grief tour, is because of what I've seen online with our people after the election. They were, I'm sick. What are we going to do? Brothers and sisters, man, for the first 16 presidents of the United States, we were enslaved. Lincoln so-called emancipated us, right? We had three Reconstruction presidents. It ended with Rutherford B. Hayes, the 19th president. He withdrew the federal troops from the South and ended the military occupation of the South. Jim Crow began. We were under Jim Crow from the 19th president to the 35th and 36th president, which is Kennedy and Johnson. Then we got the Civil Rights Act of 1960. We got the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965, Fair Housing Act of 1968 after the assassination of Dr. King. And everything that we've seen has been rolled back. It's being rolled back. All the things we thought we gained have been rolled back. The 13th Amendment has been turned against us. The end of involuntary servitude or slavery, except that you're duly convicted of a crime. And what did they do? They started convict leasing. They said, we're criminals, so they locked us up, so they re-enslaved us again. The 14th Amendment, it's equal protection under the law and gave us citizenship. Has it been turned around? Everybody that's come here, that set their foot from Ellis Island or came from Cuba and came here, all these ethnic groups and people have benefited from it, and we're still lagging behind. 15th Amendment gave us the right to vote. Women finally got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment of the Constitution. But look at us right now. They take away our voters' rights, all of these things. After a while, we have to say to ourselves, just like the Native American, they're looking at all of the treaties that have been signed. The Americans broke every one of them treaties except for maybe one or two. Why don't we, at this point in time, it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We have to now have a family meeting. Because the Democrats have not been good to us, nor has the other party. Remember, 100 years plus ago, we were all Republicans.
What would the topic of that family meeting be?
The topic of that family meeting would be simply this, Mr. Farrakhan teaches us that politics without economics is symbol without substance. It is really to understand the very founding of America, The 13 colonies were charters, either by the Crown of England or for the Parliament or private interest. And every one of these colonies really was a place where I'm making this investment, you give me return on investment. And they had their own governance system. That's why you had governors and you had these legislatures there in those things. But after a while, the business arrangement wasn't fair, and they decided now to start fighting with their own cousins and shooting. And when they finally came together, they had what is called the Articles of Association, which is where they would say, we're loyal citizens of the Crown. Why are you treating us bad? But since you're going to treat us bad, this is what we're going to do. We're going to boycott your imported goods. Anybody that has your goods, they're selling them, we're going to confiscate them, use the profits for ourselves, but we'll pay them the principal that they paid. And after that, they began shooting. You had the Boston Massacre, and all these things took place.
So would that be the topic for the family meeting today?
The family meeting has to be that we have to understand that the root of America, when they had these 74 white male property owners were invited to Philadelphia in 1787. Listen to what I'm saying. 55 showed up, 42 stayed, 39 signed what is called the Constitution of the United States, then had ratification conventions. It really is about, America is a corporation. And as Herbert Hoover said, the business of America is business. So we have to understand that the basis of this is economics. Why did they start integration? Because Dr. King had the Montgomery bus boycott and almost bankrupt Montgomery because black people decided we're not going to ride the bus, we're not going to support the system, right? Why did they assassinate Dr. King? This city, San Antonio, has the largest MLK parade in the world.
Correct.
Why do we always recite just the end of Dr. King's last speech? I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. That's all but we ignore the whole speech that he gave, calling for, he's saying, redistribute the pain. He said, if you're not going to treat God's children right, we're not going to support these corporations. He called for a boycott of Coca-Cola, Wonder Bread, and then he called for a bank in and an insurance in. That's what we need to do. See, desegregation was right, which means this, that under the Constitution, if my character and my money should be able to take me anywhere, integration was the sin where we abandon our own institutions.
Agreed.
Right? It's good to stay at a Holiday Inn or to stay at a Hilton and all that, but we need to own them.
Right.
We didn't need to give up our taxi cab and our bus company. We didn't need to give up our baseball teams and all of that. We didn't have to abandon. This is why our children are everywhere.
Black Wall Street, they burned it down.
They burned it down. Not only that, I'm the great-grandchild of the survivors of the Wilmington Massacre of 1898, with the only successful American coup d'etat that's ever taken place in America. Go on PBS and you'll see it's called American Coup. I'm the great-grandchildren of those people from Wilmington, North Carolina, and that's why it must be in my DNA to stand up and say this. So I'm saying to us this, that brothers and sisters, we need to understand these things that I think William Clay wrote in his book. When it comes to politics, right? Because our previous discussion was kind of separating religion and all that. I want to remove these barriers, Sister Dr. Sharon. When it comes to politics, let's talk about politics and public policy. We should have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. We should just have permanent interests. So in that family meeting, we need to define our permanent interests. What are the 5 things, the 10 things we can agree on? Whether it's education, economics, healthcare, whatever the social justice. Let's define those things. Let's synthesize something and say to everybody that wants to run for office, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, we set these 10 things in front of you and say, where do you stand on these things? We sit and we listen to what they have to say, and then we do we dismiss them from the room. Okay, leave. And we have a discussion. He agreed with only 4 of the 10 things. Why should we vote for him? Why should we vote for her? And then we come back and we tell them the bad news. I'm sorry, we can't support you. But the one that does, based upon our unapologetic agenda. We have to have an unapologetic agenda. You know, geometry teaches us that the whole is the sum of its parts. So we have to be a part of in order to belong to. We want to do all this coalition building. But look at what happened with Vice President Harris. We thought that white women were going to be with us on the issue of abortion. They voted for those abortion amendments in their states, and then they went and they voted for her opponent. The unions, thought the unions were behind her. But some union members voted for it, and now he's getting ready, according to what I've read in the paper, he's going to get rid of the National Labor Relations Board. So they're getting double-crossed. The blacks and Hispanics, they were a small group that voted for him. But he's talking about on day one, he's going to round up these people. And if you know, he said, well, are you going to separate families? He said, no. He said, no, we're going if they're illegal, we're going to deport the whole family. So there might be some American citizens that get kicked out of this. So we have to understand, when you brought up the point about the inflation and then these tariffs and all this, what I'm saying to us is, what's in our best interest? Because the upcoming Texas legislature, the lobbyists will be there. The insurance company will be there. They've got an unapologetically insurance agenda. Law enforcement, the Fraternal Order of Police have an unapologetically law enforcement agenda. Oil and gas. None of these people apologize for what it is that they're advocating for. Why don't black people have that same thing? And we need to tell the Republicans or Democrats, we're not voting for Jack. We're not going with you unless you address our issues.
Okay, let's talk about education.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Let me top on that one.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity of visiting a charter school here in town where, just observation-wise, it was predominantly, first of all, black students, but somehow they're able to do a focus on culturally relevant pedagogy, not CRT as the politicians want to put it, but they focus in on culturally relevant pedagogy. And then I'm constantly getting these news clips where our black kids are getting harmed in school. One tried to commit suicide. Just constant abuse. And so last week, and I'm a public school administrator at one point in time. I'm a public school product. But I was telling the audience, I said, I never thought that I would say this, but I have come to the conclusion that if our kids are not safe in these schools, we need to pull them out and either homeschool them, put in some type of cluster with other kids. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that is a lot of people don't understand that daily attendance. Your child is worth so much money when they're in a seat at a certain time of the day. So if we pull our kids out of school, say like 2 days a week, and put them into a school where we just flood them mentally with black history related to math, stuff like that, and then send them back to the other school for 2 days, that school district would lose a lot of money. But we don't understand the economics of education.
I agree. And we don't understand why they're creating vouchers.
I'm going to ask you about that.
They're trying to destroy the public school system. No, they just cannot pay teacher pensions anymore. It's not sustainable. So I create these other schools where you don't have to pay into a pension system or any of that. Now, there's Social Security, there's Medicare, there's Medicaid, but I don't, what's it called, TRS system? Mm-hmm. I don't want to pay into that because it's breaking my budget. I can't afford it. So let me create this voucher system. And there's nothing wrong with school choice. We need school choice.
Is there a racial component into vouchers?
I'm sure there would be, because everything in America always winds up that way. Think of anything you want to think of that's a national policy. The GI Bill, anything that has to do with housing, farm administration money, anything comes down. In order for those things to pass, the southern states had to vote for it, but they said if it's going to be, we got to have state control of it. So when the GI Bill comes down, when these education money comes down, it's distributed through the state. When federal highway money comes down, HUD money comes down, it's also funneled through the state. And if you have a state that is adversarial to black people, it'll play itself out on the state level.
I think we got a question.
So they said, would you prefer to get paid to teach your child? So, Project 2025. They've got a provision in there to where homeschool teachers, mostly moms, can take that voucher system and get paid to teach a child at home. But it's in Project 2025. We just don't know about it, except folks like me who don't mind.
Is that what the question is?
But it says, would you prefer to get paid to teach your child? And I would say yes.
If I'm qualified, yes.
Or put them in a cluster with
Or
someone.
put them in a cluster and then pay those persons that have our best interest, our children's best interest at heart. They got to have a knowledge of self.
Exactly.
They got to know who they are and whose they are, and whose they are, of course, is. So there can be no discrimination according to religion, or race, or creed, or culture, or
Let me ask
class.
this question. When you have in the Nation of Islam and you have people that do homeschooling, do they have a curriculum they follow from the nation, or how does that work?
It's both. It's a curriculum from the nation,
Okay.
but also there's a curriculum that should be followed in terms of passing certain standards, math, reading standards, science, and historical standards when it comes to the state of Texas, because they'll have they actually have, these homeschoolers actually have a joint graduation.
Oh, do they?
No. Oh yeah, I've attended them. I've got members in our school, in our mosque, who have gone through that homeschooling, but yet online they're able to go through these modules of learning, pass these modules of learning, and then earn a diploma. So I don't have a problem with school choice whatsoever. I just need to make sure that the choices we make is in our best interest, our permanent interest.
Let's talk about the international situation. What's happened in Syria, what's happening in Ukraine, and how all of those things affect us as Black people in America. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. You're looking at what has taken place since October 7th, a year ago, and all the billions of dollars that we sent over to Israel to slaughter the Palestinian people, slaughter the people in Lebanon, and they're even bombing the people in Syria.
Yes, they are.
We sent billions of dollars over to Ukraine, but yet you don't have anything for us here?
Right.
Are you talking about in terms of reparations when you say that?
Anything.
For me, sister, reparations is not a check. Because if you give us a check, especially this time of year, we have a saying in the Nation of Islam, up with Jesus, down with Santa. We need to redistribute the pain by not going and spending our money with these people who don't respect us. Okay, I'll lower my tone. But when you look at what's happening overseas, the Elijah Muhammad always taught us, pay attention to what's going on overseas, for you will see it come here. What does that mean? You look at the current administration and what the incoming administration, he said what he wants to do with the Justice Department, with the police, even with the military, against those who may be against his policies. So what you see over there and how the Palestinians are being suppressed, there's a book called The Palestine Laboratory. And unfortunately, what happens is that if you study the Anti-Defamation League, they work with law enforcement and they send the police over there to be trained. And what are they being trained in? They're being trained in how to suppress those elements in the society that may be against that society. So they've learned how to develop technologies, methodologies to suppress the Palestinian people. And what they've done is that they transferred that technology and that knowledge over to our police forces.
Well,
So you need to look at the San Antonio Police Force and see, have they been over there? Has any of them been over there? Or have any of them been over here to consult with us? Because if you're wondering why our people are getting treated the way they're getting treated, perhaps it's the same tactics that they're using over there.
Did you have another question?
Well, I was just reading a poll. There was a question asked, will you be watching the inauguration? And so 66% said yes, and 33% said no.
I will not be.
I mean, I'm always interested in things, even things I disagree with. We have to not adopt white people's cancel culture. We have to listen to diverse voices, even those we disagree with. Because if we don't, then we're going to miss something. We need to hear what he's saying.
That's how come we got, this is, and I agree with you. A lot of us didn't believe that Project 2025 was for real. I said, this is their blueprint. This is in writing. Look at who wrote,
Right.
those chapters. I said, this is for real.
He appointed the author to his administration.
Right.
Because he said,
J.D. Vance?
not only J.D. Vance, no, the author that actually wrote it, he appoints it now to his administration. That's what I'm saying. He said, I don't know nothing about it. Remember he said, I don't know nothing about it.
Right.
But he pointed it. Listen, brother, we have to understand that actually the president didn't really run the country.
Right.
It's a shadow government that runs the country. This is not no conspiracy theory. They actually, when you hear them talk, see, this is why you have to listen to them, because sometimes there's truth mixed with falsehood. And you and I have to have, through the power of discernment, how to pluck those diamonds out of the pile of dung. So wait a minute, there's a deep state. What does that mean? That means that there are people that are in the permanent bureaucracy, the CIA, intelligence services, that they don't give a skip what the president or the politicians say. They're doing stuff overseas in our name we don't even know anything about.
Right.
Syria, for instance, right? We think that it was some popular uprising. But according to what we read and we know, we know that Turkey and Israel and, yes, the United States and some of the Sunni countries were behind those who overthrew Assad. Why? Because Assad was an Alawite, which is a branch of the Shia, which is different than Sunni, right? When the French and the British came into the Middle East after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, they split up the Middle East in what you call Francophone and Anglophone spheres of influence. And they learned from their father, Yaqub, divide and conquer, divide and rule. Let me make this point, then we'll go to the question. What they did was they created these boundaries, or these national boundaries, just like in Africa and other places. And what they did was in Syria, they put a Shiite minority over a Sunni majority. In Iraq, they put a Sunni minority over a Shiite majority. And what happens is that these people, in order to keep, there was suppression going on all around. They call them dictators and all that. Well, today's dictators was America's friends yesterday. And so what we have to understand is that this game's been played against us. They're going to play favoritism. They're going to favor this one and that one against us, and we're going to be played off one against another. That's what's happening. The unraveling of a great nation is taking place here in America, and Mr. Farrakhan's last public address was called, "What Does Allah, the Great Mahdi, and the Great Messiah have to say about the war in the Middle East?" And everything he said in February 2024 is manifesting itself right now. We need to pay attention.
Just a quick question. Do you have any opinion on the drones that have been flying?
Of course. We've been telling you since the 1930s that there's a mother plane with 1,500. Yeah, the Great Wheel, and the 1,500 baby planes that come out from it. Everybody laughed at, the Muslims believe in spaceship. No. And all of a sudden now they're having congressional hearings about it. And now these people are losing their mind about these drones. I don't know whether they're drones that people are flying, but the truth of the matter is that they've known for years. When they arrested Elijah Muhammad in 1942, they took his book bag with all of the teachings, and they took a blackboard that was in the temple that had a drawing of the mother plane on it. He says in the Theology of Time, a series of speeches he gave in the early 1970s, that they questioned him for hours about the mother plane. And they asked the question of him, when does that thing go into effect? He said, when you attack us. And notice that these anomalies that they're seeing is over very strategic places in America. Mm-hmm. This ain't no foreign government. And these is not some slick, shiny-headed green men from Venus or Mars that are flying. These are black people flying these things. What we don't seem to understand is that, again, I go back to scripture.
Wait a minute. You think that the drones are being flown by black people?
I don't know about the drones are run by remote control. I'm talking about the wheels.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about that pillar of fire,
Okay.
that pillar of fire that led the children of Israel through the wilderness. I'm talking about that pillar of cloud that God's presence was there. I'm talking about Ezekiel's wheel. I'm talking about the fiery chariot that took Elijah to heaven. I'm talking about the cloud that Jesus was taken up in and he returned again in the cloud. I'm talking about that New Jerusalem, that city in the sky that they seen coming down from heaven to earth. There is a mother wheel and it is piloted by black people.
Got a question.
Yes, sir.
Would foreign leaders respect a black woman over a white woman?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this meeting that Caleb went to where these leaders of the banking industry,
Right.
global banking industry were at a meeting. And these sisters came in, probably from Africa,
There we are.
and they had total control. They had everybody's attention. So can a white woman have that much power and get the respect of the foreign leaders?
I don't know the answer to that question. And Mr. Parker teaches us, when you don't know, just say you don't know. I don't know. But I know this much, that this world is doomed by the treatment of women. And so regardless of how, whether they respected them at that meeting or not, I know that this system of this world does not honor the woman as they should. And because they don't, and suppress the woman and disrespect the woman, this world is doomed by God himself.
We have any more questions?
No more questions.
I would like to ask you if there's any last things you'd like.
Man, I got plenty to talk about. That's up to you all. I mean, it's up to you all whether you want to talk about it or not.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
I mean, I got a whole, I want to talk about, again, I would like to talk about disaster preparedness.
Okay.
If I'm from the standpoint, I'm looking at how God freed the children of Israel from Pharaoh. He brought plagues on Egypt. Mr. Farrakhan teaches us, watch the weather. Muhammad wrote a book called Fall of America, and he said that the judgments would take place using rain, hail, snow, earthquakes, and other things. Look at the unusual weather. You can call it global warming, all that. No. Climate change. God is changing the climate because they won't obey. So he's getting their attention. God doesn't fight by having other nations invade America. God has spared America for himself. He's going to make an example of America using the forces of nature, and it's going to cause us to turn to one another instead of on one another, to talk to one another instead of talking at one another, and have the ability to say, you know something, what does the Bible say? What is it? And what was the last plague? The last plague was the plague of death. And then Pharaoh said, you know, I'm going to let them go. And then he changed his mind. His heart was hardened. We shouldn't look at who's in the White House. We should look at it from the standpoint of that's Pharaoh. And remember now, the Pharaoh that said, kill all boy babies and spare the females, remember it says in the beginning of Exodus that there was a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. So there were pharaohs who were favorable to the slaves. And then there's a Pharaoh that came in that said, you know something? We need to watch their population lest they join on to an enemy and come against us. So when we look at what the government has done, COINTELPRO, they come in, they destroyed all of our black groups and organizations. After the million, I'll go back to the Million Man March. After the Million Man March, they began giving out faith-based grants to all of our people. The very head of the Baptist ministers, Dr. Henry Lyons, he condemned the Million Man March and others, but he went to prison for misspending the money that came into their convention. When he went into federal prison, even though he spoke against the Million Man March, spoke against Mr. Farrakhan sent word into the federal prison for them brothers to look out for him. Why do I know that? Because one of his acolytes, one of his top men in the Baptist movement came to me and said, "Brother, I love Minister Farrakhan." He said, "Brother, when Henry Lyons went to prison, Mr. Farrakhan said, word in the Brothers of Nation Islam, look out for Henry Lyons." The same thing with Mel Reynolds, who took over from Gus Savage, who condemned Mr. Farrakhan. He went to federal prison for something he did. Mr. Farrakhan sent word in the prison, look out for him, take care of him. No, we love our people, man.
Next
I'm sorry, go ahead, Sister Sharon.
We got Kevin Charles here. Thank you, Kevin. And he gave us a discussion prompt. Our only concern in 2025 should be.
Should be what? It should be what God said, let my people go. See, Pharaoh has let us go. When are we going to let Pharaoh go? Because the federal government has been really, in a sense, our protector when it has protected us. We rely on government. Elijah Muhammad teaches us, and Honorable Louis Farrakhan teaches us, we need to do for self or suffer the consequences.
I agree.
And now that a new Pharaoh is coming and a new president is coming, and his agenda, according to 2025 and other things, we already know is not necessarily business as usual. So I say to us, like, I'll give you a simple example. In the state of Texas, we got more black people in the state of Texas than any other state in the union. Mm-hmm. We got more black farmers and ranchers than any other state in the union. Why do we have food deserts? And why are we dependent on the food the food people to feed us? If our churches and our organizations would organize themselves like I see in this beautiful thing called the Black Book. Oh my God. San Antonio, y'all got it going on. Would organize themselves and say, we're going to connect all of these black farmers to our neighborhoods, and we're going to set up farmers markets so that they don't have to depend on the federal government for subsidies. They can grow food, and we create the logistical supply chain from the field to the meal. And we get in fresh fruits and vegetables in our community, and we support them.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So Kevin Charles again, he says, our only question should be, when is Louis Farrakhan and Silas Muhammad going to unite?
Silas Muhammad. They already, in a sense, have united.
Please tell us who Silas Muhammad.
Silas Muhammad was a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who established a nation of Islam himself after the fall of the nation of Islam. Mr. Farrakhan, as one of, or the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, after 2.5 years, 3 years, he said, I'm going to rebuild the nation of Islam. And he went about that business.
Now, this was after the son
took over the nation of Islam. Nation of Islam, okay. and took us in another direction. Okay. And the value of Imam Wafd Muhammad is his value is that it is everything that happened in the nation and to the nation is by the permissive and active will of God. He has great value. Imam Wafd Muhammad has great value. And what we have to do is that we must not repeat the things that happened in the past, where we hold these grudges against one another because of the pain or the trauma that we've gone through. So Silas Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan have met, but there are things that we don't necessarily agree upon, but we don't shed each other's blood. Sure. See? So when you think about that, usually when you look overseas and you look at these Muslim groups, they're killing each other. There's one cat over there, he got a rocket-propelled grenade shooting at one set of Muslims, another set of Muslims with an AK-47 shoot, and both of them are hollering at each other, Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest. Man, we can't follow that model. This is why Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said in the latter days, the son of Islam will rise from the west. I believe that Silas Muhammad and those who follow him and the followers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan will all be one. And even those who follow Imam Wafd Muhammad, we will all be one again, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the nation would fall, rise again, never to fall again. And he said at his dinner table, all of you are going to leave me. And some of them got sad and said, all of us? He said, well, the few of you that be left would be as if none of us is. He said, but we'll all come back together again. What's going to cause that? A nail that we're laying on. And we're all going to come back together. You'll see.
I want to thank you for being here with us again.
Thank you.
For being here. It's been delightful. And
Thank you.
Dr. Sharon, any last words?
Yeah, it's always a learning experience when the nation is here. It kind of solidifies some things that I believe that I agree with. And I'm welcome to talk to you again. And I'm going to get in contact with the nation, bringing in one of the sisters to discuss women's issues.
Yes, ma'am.
The door is always open here at Contemporary Black Voices for you to be able to come and express anything that you would like to express. We will leave that open for you.
Can I give to the audience, please, go to NOI.org. You can watch our weekly webcast. You can go to NOImedia.org and you can see any of our past speeches and anything. And I urge everyone to look at the last 6 public speeches of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan from 2020 to 2024. The Unraveling of a Great Nation, Jesus is the Key, the Criterion, Announcement to the World, the Swan Song, right? The War of Armageddon has begun. And what did Allah, the great Mahdi and the great Messiah, have to say about the war in the Middle East? Watch these speeches and see that what Minister Farrakhan told us in those speeches are all unfolding right now. And notice that Mr. Farrakhan hasn't had any public speeches since then because he said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him, be quiet. And because when he's quiet, now we're seeing everything that he said come about. Brothers and sisters, pay close attention to what's going on overseas. Pay close attention to what's going on domestically. Let us come together. Let us reason together and work out our problems and our differences and find common ground. And let us move forward one with another in love, in brother and sisterhood.
We'll say goodbye. And this is Contemporary Black Voices telling our story our way.
Unfiltered.
Stay there. I got to get photos early.
That's right.
All right. You want us to